flowers bloom in spring. Tell me who gives the air that you breathe. Ooh. Everything that you need he will provide, so you may as well come on and give him a try. 'Cause he's awesome. Ooh, he's awesome. He's awesome. What would I do without him? Couldn't make a move without him. I don't wanna be without him. He's awesome.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to ZMR Ministries. I'm Pastor Z, and thank you for joining me for another episode of What's the Issue Wednesday. Now tonight we have a pretty little touchy topic. It's called damaged goods, life after divorce. Now I know some of us out there, we're single, but there are some people who are single because they've been divorced, and sometimes that process can be very painful. It can stretch you in ways that you never imagined, and you'll be going through a process that you never thought you would have to go through. Rebuilding is what I'm talking about. And today my guest, she's been through that process. She's been through the darkness of it, through the goodness of it, and she's come out on the other side, and she wants to share her story with you guys. So please help me welcome my guest, my cousin, Candace Locke. Welcome, Candace. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for wanting to be open about your personal process. Now, as I know, I've never been, through a divorce. But of course, I've watched friends go through it. I watched family go through it. I watched coworkers, old coworkers, church people, whoever it is. I've seen people go through divorce, and it's never nice. It's very seldom you see a cordial divorce where everybody's good. But even with that, there's still a level of pain. There's still a level of uncertainty. There's still a level of fear. So what was that like? Your initial thoughts, the moment that you decided to file for divorce.
Well, when I finally made the decision, I think for me, the thought was, I forgot the question.
That's okay. I said, what were your initial thoughts
About
the moment you decided to file for divorce?
Well, my initial thoughts, I think were just a failure. I felt like I had failed at something. And just me with my personality type, if there's something that I'm working towards or something that I try, even if I'm not, a professional at it, I want to master it. I can't fail at it. And so with my marriage, I felt like because, it pretty much dissolved, that I had failed in some way. So I think I carried that for a while, maybe a year. I carried that part, that sense of failure.
Was it failure to yourself or to others? Did you feel like you failed yourself more?
I don't really know that I put a face to it. I think that I looked at it more as, the thing that it was, the marriage itself. It was something that I couldn't salvage. I couldn't, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
So what is that moment like? Because we picked up, or we started right at the divorce. What was the moment like that day that you decided, I'm doing this today? Was it a process, or was it an aha moment, or was it just you woke up one day and said, this is it? What was that like?
No, the decision to leave, it was definitely gradual. I don't think that you just wake up, one morning, first everything is great, and then I'm leaving. Of course there are things that lead up to that. So of course you have thoughts of, what would life be like if, or who would I be if. So it was definitely a gradual process because, of course you want things to work. You want to keep working and keep working and keep working. And then you just kind of get to a point, to where you realize that, things just are not going to work. They're just not going to work. And then you also have to kind of accept that it's nobody's fault. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like we have people that come into our lives, whether they're friends, family, or relationships, and we feel like we have to cling to them for life,
right.
Forever. And sometimes they're just here for the moment to teach us what we needed to learn, and vice versa, for us to teach them something. So I think that that's where a lot of that pain and heartache comes from, because we feel like once we attach to something, we can't detach. This is for life.
Right.
I feel like if we thought about it more, and I hate to downplay it, but if you think about it more like a career, you go to a job and you're miserable every day.
Right.
The pay isn't good. There's no benefits. Eventually, you're going to become unhappy in that job.
Right.
And what are you going to do? You're going to, do what makes you happy. So, just the thought of, I feel a lot of times people feel like they have to stay because society tells them to stay, whether they're happy or unhappy, and that's just not the case.
I often hear people say, marriage is sometimes an investment. And so when I've spoken to others about divorce, they were like, sometimes they prolong the stay because they looked at it like, I've invested time, I've invested years, I've invested finances, emotions, and I don't want to lose my investment. Was that the case for you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The investment for me was my love. Like, that was my investment. That's what I can't get back.
Right.
That's that thing that builds and builds and builds. And that's why when a relationship ends, you don't just automatically start loving the person.
Right.
It takes time. So, it was never, we've been together for, 10 years. We should just keep working at it. Because I felt like, it's been 10 years.
Right. That you guys were married.
Well, together for 10, married for 7. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a fear of losing what I had worked so hard for. It was losing what I loved.
So that was your greatest fear when you filed?
Yeah, it was wow, like, this is really the end of this love bond. You know what I mean? It wasn't, I'm gonna lose, my status, or I'm gonna lose, all of the years I put into, building this relationship. It was just this.
The love that you planted.
It was that. Yeah.
Right. So was that fear derived from, am I going to ever find this type of love again?
I don't want to ever find that type of love again.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Let's be very clear.
Let's be very clear. I don't want to find that love again. I feel like when you make the decision to walk away from a love situation that did not work, it's very seldom that you want to revisit that in another partner.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's pretty much how I feel about that. I definitely don't want to find that type of love again. But the fear of, I think my fear was, oh my God, I'm 35. My life is really, it was more of that. It was, wow, I spent a third of my life, with this person, and like, what part of my life do I have left?
Right.
I felt like my youth had been, spent there. So I dealt with that for a while. Like, oh my God, everybody's never gonna love me. And I may not ever love anybody, you know what I mean? So, you go through all of that, in the beginning as well.
So what does love look like for yourself? Versus when you were, before you got married, how you loved yourself, while you were married, how you loved yourself, and now what does that look like?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question. Before I got married, I thought I knew myself. Before I got married, I felt like I was very headstrong, and I was, but not in the sense when it came to matters of the heart. Okay. And I think that was where I was immature and very naive, because I love.
Right.
But yeah.
You don't know. Are you still trying to find out how to love you?
Well, it's actually, I'm learning. So before I got married, it's like I didn't really know me. I was really young. So I got married young, first
right.
of all.
Yeah, I know.
So of course I didn't know me. Like in hindsight, I'm like, you never should have got married so young.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it. But but what I will say is during the marriage, there was less self-discovery that I recognized because all of my focus was being put on the marriage, right? And what my husband was going through, and the demons that he was fighting, and what his stresses are. So it's you pour yourself, all of yourself, into a person, and you don't really take the time to
remember you.
Yeah, to remember you. You really do forget you,
right?
Unfortunately, but coming out of it, you realize how much of you did miss. I mean, and that's physically, like, I remember looking in the mirror and I was just like, oh my God, who is this? Seriously. I was like, who have I become? You know? But afterwards, it was eye-opening. And divorce is a really hard thing, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I will say that I'm grateful for the lesson because it was such an eye-opening experience, not only to my views of relationships, love, how I view myself. Now I'm learning to like appreciate myself more and really listen to what it is I want instead of, because I don't have the interference of what the other person wants.
Right.
It's crazy because even like the smallest things, like my eating habits change, certain things, like I really don't like this.
Right.
And that's just pretty much how it goes. I mean, and spiritually as well. It's been really eye-opening.
You know what's interesting? I was listening to you saying, who am I? And I've never been married, guys, but I was in a long-term relationship for like 7 years. And I remember when it ended and I was on, the process of healing. And by no means am I trying to compare my breakup to your divorce.
Right, I get you.
But that struck me because I remember simple things like getting my nails done. And I remember I looked at my nails and I was like, I don't even like my nails like this. And I was trying to watch different things on TV and I was like, I don't even like this show. And I would wear certain things and I was like, I hate wearing this. And I realized everything about me was him. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
And that was very hurtful for me because I was just like, Zanya, at the time. And it's funny because you were getting married at 25. And I was going through this breakup at 26. So, I'm saying the age dynamics. At 26, you're still trying to learn yourself. Still. And so here I am really coming
at 30, you're still trying to learn yourself.
At almost 40, let me tell you, we a little over the hump. But it was very, it was a scary thing for me. And I remember I broke down crying because I was like, I thought I knew myself. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes you do invest so much in trying to make it work. My investment was, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it to the altar. After all of this stuff, we're gonna make it work. And then that love, it's so true. And I've never heard anyone put it that way because most of the time when you talk about investment, they're talking about finances. We have a company together. We have children together. Things of that nature. But the love that you give, you can never get that. That's a price you can't pay.
Right.
So I want to ask you because oftentimes you talk to people who've gone through divorce, and sometimes they say it was over a long time ago. When did you know it was over compared to when it was actually over?
That's a tricky question. So when you say actually over, you mean finalized or like over as in, all right, we're done with this?
Right, divorce. Like this is it.
Right. It was all very close. Because I was always the, hey, let's stick this out, let's try, let's work, let's figure this out. Right. What do you need? You know what I mean? And then I want to say within the last maybe 6 months, it just became like unbearable. Like this can't be life.
Right.
And it really made me think about the structure a marriage, especially from like a religious standpoint, because I feel like a lot of times in Christianity they teach you, or even in other religions, they teach you just to stay no matter what. Right. Like, who cares what
work it out. God hates divorce.
Unhappy.
Right.
You know? And I just, I really sat down and there was a question that I had in my head for like that 6 months, but I was afraid to ask. And for that whole time, I did not pray. I couldn't, because I didn't know what to pray for. I didn't know if I was praying to stay with someone who didn't love me and to be miserable for the rest of my life. Am I praying like for that? Or am I praying that one day this can, like possibly work? Right. And I just wanted to know what to do. I wanted to know, all right, like I reached the end of my rope. So my prayer was basically, I just need to know, like, am I praying to walk away? Like, is this my walk away point or not? And I was afraid to ask that question. Because I was afraid to get the answer. Right.
But you don't know, it'll hurt you.
Yeah, what you don't know didn't hurt. And I was just like, one day I was just like, this can't be it. I was like, I just can't believe that the God that I serve would want for me to be miserable for the rest of my life for the sake of this union. Right. You put so much into it and you realize it doesn't work. So now what, God, right? So I remember I went into the living room, got down in the chair, and I just prayed and I just asked the question. And the same day I got the answer. Right. And it shook me.
Was it the answer you wanted?
It's yes and no. It's the answer I wanted because I wanted the truth. Right. I wanted the answer. And it's not because I didn't want to accept that was going to be it.
That it was over.
Yeah. So.
That's interesting because, most people are praying so hard, whether it's to keep it together or Lord, show me so I can go. Very seldom do you hear people say, I didn't pray at all.
I couldn't. I don't know. I really, really couldn't because I didn't know what to pray for. Because up until then, I prayed out. Right. I prayed just about every prayer to save it. And so I was just like, well, maybe I'm just not praying the right thing. So I'm just, I don't have anything to say. That's it, So I just stayed really quiet for like 6 months and I didn't pray until that day. And I was just like, all right, that's my answer.
So was it something unexpected on his end?
I'm sorry. Unexpected. When you say unexpected, I'm gonna say yes. On his end, he shouldn't have been, caught by surprise. Right. There was no surprise, but I remember the words that were said, were, because my question was, well, why would you behave in a way? Right. If you didn't want this thing to dissolve? And the answer was, well, I didn't think you'd ever leave. So for that, I would think that, maybe it was a shock. Right. But,
And it's kind of one of those things where you're not appreciating what you have until it's gone.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And you can't make someone appreciate you. They either do or they don't. And another thing is, people always feel like, you have to teach a person how to love you and how to treat you. Right. You can teach them how to treat you, but you can't teach a person how to love you.
That's good, Candace.
That's just, they either do or they don't.
Right.
And one thing I always tell, friends and family, people will do what they want to do and they won't do what they don't want to do. And that's just it.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. There's no, maybe it is exactly what it is.
Now, you married older.
Right.
How much older was he?
14 years, yeah.
So do you think that played a big part because of, did you feel like he ever had the advantage over you? And that's possibly why he felt as though you would never leave?
I absolutely believe that age played a part in it.
Right.
I think about it now at my age, and if I were to, go back, 10 years or, you know what I mean, and date someone that much younger than me, just think about the amount of experience that you had over them. You know what I mean? So, those things happen. But yeah, age definitely does play a part, whether you want it to or not.
Right.
Whether you want it to or not, yeah.
So now you've gotten the divorce, and it's happened. It's final. Did you ever feel ashamed or shunned because of the scarlet letter of a D?
Did I ever feel shunned? No. I don't feel like I've ever felt shunned. No, I really didn't get any, I guess, backlash for it. I did, of course, get, family, you should try to, keep working. And I was like, y'all don't understand how long I've been working.
Right.
But other than that, no, not really. I did kind of withdraw. Obviously, I withdrew from everything and everyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's just my personality. So I just had to get it together. Yeah, but I never really felt shunned about getting a divorce. I think it was just in my own head, just that sense of this one thing that I felt it. You know? So.
And you know what? It's always good that you have your own mind when making such a drastic step like that, that you don't have outside voices, influencing you. Because what happened, like you said, family and friends are like, you need to go back, you need to work it out, you need to do this, that, and the third. But they don't see the inside. They don't see the backside of what I say, the cross. Of what you're enduring.
Right. And one thing, I'm a very, very private person. Extremely private. And so like in relationships and things like that, I never would talk about my relationships and things like that, like family and, but one thing that I realized from the relationship before him was how important it was to have some kind of sounding board. And I think that having a sounding board really helped me get to this point a lot faster. Because when you're in a relationship with a person, especially, when you're having to deal with gaslighting, things like that, and you just feel like you're constantly spinning your wheels, and then you begin to ask yourself, well, maybe I'm crazy, maybe maybe there's something wrong with me. And so I remember talking to my best friend, and she was actually the first person that I really kind of, told. And and just having that sense of reason to say, you're right, you're not crazy. It was like, okay, I can, and then I started to open up to my mom, and once you open up to your mom, it's a wrap. But it's you need that. So I feel like you always have to have at least one person. Never be in a relationship completely alone, isolated. And not that, not that I was completely isolated, from them, but just my personal preference and how I deal with my business. But yeah, definitely always have one person, you can just tell the worst to. You know what I mean? Because it was that helped me kind of reprogram my mind to say, all right, this is not right, this is not what you want, and to get me to where I am now.
And you need somebody who will give unbiased advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you have someone that's just so on your side, that have you making, very detrimental decisions that you will regret later, and then it will cause resentment towards them, and the blame game will begin to begin. And I love how you said after you spoke to your best friend, you feel like, okay. And it's not that you needed permission, but sometimes you take all the responsibility on yourself, and you feel as though I'm wrong. But sometimes when you have a conversation with somebody else, they help you to see, I guess in a different light, or just to affirm what you already know.
Affirm, yes. Yes, yeah, that's true.
That's so interesting. Now, being so young and going through a divorce, divorce is hard either way, especially 10 years in together and then 7 years married, there is a lot that was on the table. Did you ever feel like I was damaged goods? And what I mean by that is, I'm a sociology major. And I remember in one study we were talking about how women tend to feel like damaged goods after divorce because it's like you have that on you, that weight, that letter. And it's like a man can go through a divorce and it's like, oh, well, it didn't work out with his last wife. It's cool. But with a woman, it's like, he didn't want you. What's wrong with you?
Exactly. What's wrong with you?
Right.
I don't know. It was. Oh God. Yes, again. I feel like my mind is just like.
No, it's fine. I'm sure it's a lot, and also
because I'm thinking about like so many things, like as you're talking and just like recalling, like So all right.
Having to relive stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry if I'm, unburied.
No. It's fine.
Yeah. So, did you feel like you were damaged goods?
Damaged goods.
Or do you still feel that way, or do you feel like that now?
Not anymore.
Okay. Come on.
No. In the beginning, I definitely did because there's this thing that happens when you're with a certain personality type to where you feel like you have to downplay everything about you in order for them to feel better. So being married and being in that space and also being in the, you don't want to rock the boat, you get used to just, throwing on a hoodie and just looking like whatever, hair all over the place. Because, hey, we don't want any issues, And so I feel like once I was divorced, I was still in that place a little bit. And I was like, hey, let me snap back. But I did feel like damaged goods because being so young, I don't want to say young, but having a divorce or having to say, I'm divorced.
Right.
It's just kind of weird, It's just like, well, what in the world could have happened, in such a short amount of time? So I definitely felt like that. I definitely felt like just the scar of it all, learning to trust like that again.
That's huge.
Was probably a big thing because I was like, oh, I don't want to be like one of those bitter people who just will never love again. And when we first divorced, I said, I was like, I will never do this again. I did. And, but shortly thereafter, I thought about it and I was just like, wait a minute, why would I let somebody take that from me?
Right.
Why would I cheat myself out of finding love? Yeah. So I'm working on that. Like I'm getting over it. That part of it, I think is pretty much kind of.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if there was any residue of that, where I know you've overcome a lot, you've healed a lot. You're like your old self, but there are also some differences. And so I remember we had a conversation the other day. And I was watching her from afar, even though we're cousins. She's private, I'm private. I don't overstep anybody's boundaries. I don't care if I see something or notice something. I'm still not going to say anything because I'm like, she didn't talk to me about it.
Okay.
And so I remember the other day I was telling you, I was like, I was paying attention to your social media posts, videos and things like that. And I was feeling so sad because I was like, that's not my cousin. And I wanted so bad to reach out, but I was like, I don't know if she's out of this space. You don't want to be offensive. You don't want to step on the line and then you're electrocuted. Right. Because you don't know where people are. And it's like, you overstep that boundary and it's like, I will cut you. And so, especially with something so sensitive, like a divorce, it was like she didn't even have to tell me. I knew. And I was just like, well, the moment that she decides to say something. I remember I told her, I said I reached out to her just to check on her. You know how you do a toe test? And I was just like, how you been, girl? I'm good. I was like, okay.
I for one, don't recall. I do not remember that.
I was like, I'm going to have to go back and show her that business. Because I was like, my bad, And it may have been in that space when you were just now finding yourself again. And it was just like, don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Mind your business. Let me do me. Like I forget what kind of post she had made. I don't know if it was a video, but the caption underneath, pretty much said that. Like,
really?
don't worry about what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, it's not for me, because I hadn't reached out, but I was like, clearly she like back up. You know what I'm saying? And so when you think about residue from being damaged, I saw some of that residue even though others may not have seen it. And you can see the level of freedom that you felt. And because
yes,
we've been knowing each other our whole lives, there was a level of freedom that you reached that I was like, that's not my
But listen,
that ain't her.
Listen, let me tell you something though, because I am very private.
Right.
And you also have to remember I got married really young.
Very young.
I got married young, but I married a preacher. So, who
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So who I was and who I am, it's always been the same person. Of course, I've learned more and I mature more, but that person that you, that's me.
Right.
But, it's like, and that's one of the things, like post-divorce, I'm learning I have to be me. Like, I have to be me on all levels. That's from what I wear to how I speak, to what I believe in, to what I stand up for, to how I love and how I want to be loved. You know what I mean? And so now, one lesson that I did learn in my marriage is that I wasn't vocal enough.
Right.
I think that I wasn't vocal enough in what I wanted. Or I didn't stand up for it enough. It's like it's just not enough to just say, hey, listen, you have to be very, very clear. You have to be almost, rah-rah, almost dominant in that. And I think that I've spent so much time nurturing him, trying to, like build him up, build up his stuff.
Oh, I get it.
Help, because I always felt like I would be okay. Right. I always felt like I was stronger, so I would be okay with whatever.
And that is, girl. I'm sitting here because, like I said, I was never married, but being in long-term relationships, you find yourself having to do that, especially when you're dealing with insecure men. Like you said earlier in the conversation, I had to downplay. And it's like you shouldn't ever have to do that.
Never.
Ever.
Ever have to downplay. And, and I hear a lot of people, say, insecure men, and we run into insecure men a lot. But the reality of it is we're all insecure.
Right.
We're all insecure about something. But it's just, what do you do with that? You know what I mean? Do you allow that to become like your identity to where you use it to cause damage to other people? Or are we going to like figure it out, push it apart, and work on it together? You know what I mean? And that's the difference. But yeah, definitely when you're with a person who can't see beyond themselves, it's really hard to work with them.
Right. So you said a second ago, that you were like, that is me. But because you married young and you married a preacher, a lot of that had to be contained.
And honestly, I don't even know that it was so much because he was a preacher that I felt like I had to contain it. It was just the fact that I was married, and like, okay, we can, exist in this thing, you know what I mean? But yeah.
So did you ever feel caged in?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's very difficult not to feel caged in if you're dealing with insecurities.
Right.
Because they always want, something. Something from you, like that attention, but definitely caged in a sense that I always felt like there was something not being fulfilled. Like there was something that he wasn't connecting.
There was no reciprocation.
There was no reciprocation whatsoever. And what I learned too is love language is a big thing. Huge thing. And you really have to know like your partner's love language. Because I think what happens is in society teaches boys, to men that your responsibility is to take care of the household. take care of the family. So your role is financial.
Right.
Right? They teach women the opposite.
Right.
You know, they teach women to be the nurturers, to be the lovers. So there was this class I took at church, and they explained it like in relationships, people love the way that they want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone is going to show you how they want to be loved. So all you have to do is mimic that.
Mm-hmm.
And then vice versa. And that's how you kind of get it. But men feel like finances equals love. And then they want all of the things that women provide, you know what I mean? The nurturing, the affection, and all of that in return. And a lot of times they forget that there's more than that, you know, to a relationship.
Right.
So
you know what's kind of disheartening, because a lot of time we as women, you know, growing up, and we're taught to just take care of the man.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to keep the marriage together, and we take on that sole responsibility as our own, and it leaves them without being responsible. You know what I mean? And that's a lot that I've seen in my friends' marriages that have dissolved. It was like they were constantly taking on the role of keeping it together, you know, being the glue in the relationship, when it was just like, no, we both are supposed to, you know, be cohesive. And it wasn't happening.
Right.
It wasn't happening. And it sounds like that's the same thing that happened with you. And, you know, when you said, I found myself constantly pouring, and you end up depleted because it's not being reciprocated.
Right.
And so when you walked away, it's like you walked away empty.
You walk away empty. You definitely walk away empty. And even, you know, when you really love a person, and when you say you walk away empty, there are people who go for alimony, right, and things like that. But even if that was the case, if you really love, you still walk away empty.
Right.
You still walk away empty.
Right. And that's why they're bitter. They get the money and they're still bitter.
Yeah. And you know, in one of my conversations, and this was a conversation that we had, you know, before we even started dating. You know, if I ever got married and the relationship dissolved, like, you know, how would I feel about finances? Like, who cares? Like, the relationship is over.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's something that I stuck to. You know, finances and money, they mean nothing to me. Like, they come and go. But like, when you love someone, like, I don't care how hard you try, they're always going to be somewhere. You're never going to forget them. You know what I mean? Money, you can spend it and it's gone.
It's gone with the wind.
Yeah.
But when you really love. And there's always a peace. It's always a peace. So do you feel, after going through your process of divorce, that men just, you know, by just looking in retrospect, and you can now take a step back and look at the bigger picture, even in other women's lives or men's lives, do you feel like they have the advantage after divorce?
Absolutely.
How?
You know, I hate to say it, but I was, the other day I was talking to a friend, and I was just like, they mentioned the word divorce, and I was just like, I highly recommend it.
But on vacation spot.
Listen, I highly recommend 5 stars. But only if you're unhappy. Listen. Oh my God. I know it's not. But here's what I mean. I mean, you know, if you're in a relationship and you're not satisfied and you're not happy and you feel like it's a dead end, you know when it's a dead end. You know when it's a dead end, but it's, like you said, the outside voice is telling you have to keep trying, you have to keep trying. And I think people get stuck in thinking that they only get one shot at love, you know, so they want to hold on to this person because this person is tangible, you know.
And I also, with him being a preacher, biblically, why can't I talk today? Okay, so we're taught that, you know, of course, adultery is the only law according to the Bible, and I'm not saying it's not there, so do not rip my head off. That's the only legal way spiritually that we're supposed to get divorced. But at the same time, when you're like, okay, I'm going through physical abuse though, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse. You know, I'm being drained, I'm being depleted. They're not pouring, they're not trying to. So you mean I have to wait till he goes sleep with somebody else for me to leave?
And that's what I said earlier. You know, I was like, you know, the way that, you know, Christianity teaches us, like, you just say no matter what. Like, I can't believe that my God is gonna be like, yeah, you stay over there and so
leave you in bondage.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, absolutely not. So I felt very free in that. I did.
Was that hard for you though? Was that like a determining factor in your ear when you were filing, saying, okay, the Christian way says do A, B, and C?
No, not when I made my decision, my final decision, I was very solid in it. You know, like you said, when you're done, and when you're done,
yeah.
And when I was done, that was just it. I didn't care about formalities. I didn't care about paperwork. Paperwork means nothing to me.
Right.
Once my heart is, you know, detached. So yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about that.
So how did you begin to regain life? Like, what was one of the first steps that you took? Did you just take time to heal? How did you heal? Because there's somebody right now who's probably in a dead-end marriage, you know, and they're listening and they're like, that is for me. And then there are other people that have already filed, the divorce is final, and they're like, Candace, tell me, what is my first step to regaining my life back? Can you explain that to them?
I mean, obviously the first step is really asking yourself what it is that you want. Like, where you are, can you live? That's one thing I had to ask myself. Can I live like this for the rest of my life?
Right.
Like, really, can I live like this for the rest of my life? And I just saw myself at 90. You know, like you see, like the older generations where they stayed together for 60 years, but they're both miserable. And I was just like, that's not for me. That's I can't do this because I'm such a innovative person. I can't just be, miserable for the rest of my life. So that's the first thing. Ask yourself what you really want and can you see yourself there. It's really hard to give advice for divorce because I feel like it affects people in different ways because people go through different things in their relationships. I'm not going to say mine was the worst because it wasn't. I was definitely blessed, in that sense. But afterwards, I can tell you what you kind of go through. But I can't tell you how to get through it because I feel like everybody's journey is going to be different and you're going to learn it in a different way. But you'll go through a really sad stage. You'll go through the crying. You'll even go through the, what if I take him back? You'll go through all of those and then you'll go through feeling sorry for yourself and you'll feel sorry for the other person because you'll think, oh, they need me.
Because you love them.
Because you love them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's interesting, and I'm going to let you finish your steps. I just want to interject so y'all don't beat me up for interjecting her. But how you still take on that nurturing role. Like, even though you're outside of the relationship now, you're still just like, he needs me.
Yeah. But, that wears off. It does. I mean, we've all been in relationships and we know all of the little tricky things that happen post breakup. It's the same when it comes to divorce. But what happened, the way I started really my journey to self-discovery, it really started with food, and that's when I noticed it. No, I take it back. It started with TV and food because I'm not a TV watcher. But my ex was avid TV watcher. So it was just TV was going all day long. It wasn't really something I cared for, but let's sit down and watch TV together type of thing. And I was a cooker. Like I just would cook feasts and all kinds of things and types of food that I would eat. But I realized once I was on my own, I really don't like that much. It was just like, okay, well then let me not. Just because you used to do it, then you don't have to keep doing it now. And that's how it just kind of started. and it started to spill over into other parts of my life. And it started to spill over into my relationships and how I dealt with friends and family as well. It just gives you a type of freedom to say, this is who I am and this is what I want, because you already know what you don't want.
Right.
And that's why I always say, like, in relationships, you just kind of have to take them with a grain of salt, because one thing, they either teach you what you do want or what you don't want, but you still get the lesson out of it. But it just started like that, and it was like, and then it trickled over into, well, what do I believe, and how do I really feel right now, instead of, because you get so used to like brushing your own feelings under the rug, that you just leave them on the back burner even when you're alone, you know. But you have to face them. I think the majority of the time, maybe like a year and a half, I didn't want to face it, so I used to fight back tears. Oh, and I'm not a crier, but when it happened, at the drop of a dime, it could be any. I could be looking at this like, seriously. And you know, eventually, like, you know, like that kind of subsides as well. But you'll go through the motions. You'll definitely go through the motions. It's dark. I mean, it's dark, and there were other things, you know, like that happened around the same time that just kind of all snowballed, and it got so heavy. It got so heavy on me that you get to that point to where it's like you just give up, right? And the giving up was me basically relinquishing control, because I felt like I had to control everything when everything was out of control. So I was just like, literally this. Hey, everything was just going wrong. So it was like, one other thing goes wrong, hey, okay. So I felt like all of this stuff was happening so fast, and one behind the other. I said to myself, okay, at this point, you just have to chill. You have to relax, you have to sit back and let everything take its course, because there has to be a reason why it's all coming so fast. So whatever's about to come right after this, it's going to be great, and you're going to be ready for it. So that's kind of, you know, how I started to look at it. And it made me take more control over my life. It really did, because I only really had me to, you know, focus on at that time.
But you mentioned friends and family, and you were saying, you know, you started out cooking, you know, watching TV and things like that. What did you mean by, you know, friends and family? Like when you were saying, you know, when I was asking you your process to healing, and you said it kind of shifted with friends and family as well. Was it because you were so isolated in your marriage that you became more outgoing and more present with your family and friends?
No, actually, that didn't change. Like I said, when it first happened, I withdrew from my family, family and friends.
Did they understand?
They understood after the fact. Family, they kind of knew what was going on, so they understood. Friends didn't really know everything that was going on, so once they did, you know, some of them kind of figured it out. But I really didn't have any, you know, issues with anyone. It was just like, oh my God, Candace.
So relinquishing control, because you said everything was getting out of control and you were just trying to keep it all together, and you realized you couldn't
do it.
Was that the moment that you said, you know what, I'm going to throw this all back on God? Did it all return back to Him?
It didn't. I'm not even gonna lie. It didn't, because I was still in such a deep, dark place. And it's crazy, because even in that dark place, like, I could still give love, you know what I mean, and still receive it, but dark mentally, very dark mentally. Because, you know, like I told you before, you know, like that 6 months really did a number on me. And so a lot of it afterwards was really hard, because I just, so many emotions, and I get it now. You know, you hear people talk about like when they really go through something, and they go, I was angry at God, and I just didn't want to go to jail. And I wasn't angry, but I didn't feel like talking. You know,
still didn't want to talk to him.
Well, you know, I won't even say didn't want to talk. I even changed the way that I was brought up to think about how we converse with God. So maybe that's what I mean. So there wasn't the I'm down here and I'm on my knees and it has to be in this way,
right.
You know, which was what I was used to. So after the fact, you know, I just felt like, you know, if we are, you know, made in His image, you know what I mean, like. Why does it have to be in this certain
so formal?
You know, why does it have to be so formal?
Yeah.
Why can't He hear me? You know what I mean? In any other circumstance. So I began to literally just talk at random. Like whatever it was I was thinking about, I was like, you know what, this don't really make sense. I need, you know, and that was my conversation. But as far as sitting down, having the time, no.
And you know what, that's really good that you said that, because I'm sure, I know that it hurts somebody, because a lot of us do get caught up in formalities. When we know praying is really just having a conversation with God. I mean, I talk to God when I'm cleaning up, I talk to Him when I'm driving, I talk to Him when I'm picking my nose, I just talk. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you can feel like God didn't give you your time because I didn't get on my knees.
Yeah, or I said it while I was on my way to work.
Right. You know, I didn't make it so formal, and it's like relationship, you don't always get in one spot when you talk to someone on the phone and say, the only way this relationship is going to work and the only way I can communicate with you is when I'm at home, sitting at my desk, I pick up that phone and I say hello. No, we have cell phones. You can talk to them in the store. You can talk to them at work. You can talk to them in a car when you're driving. Wherever you are, communication is at your fingertips. And that's the same thing with God. You know, when we communicate with Him, we don't have to be so formal. And I really hope that helps somebody with you saying that, because, you know, if you're going through this, you can look at Candace's story and say, you know what, I figured it out. I don't have to do all of that stuff. I can just be free with God.
Absolutely. I think that when you really, and like, you know, I told you how afterwards I went through a stage of kind of like getting to know myself, not just my old self, but the self post-divorce.
Right.
Because that's not even the same person, you know.
Right, who you were. Right. Was that devastating though?
Ooh, it hurt my ego. I can't lie. You know what? The worst part, I can't say the worst part, but it did. That part did hurt, because I felt like, when I look back on things, and there was a meme that said, you know, when I look back and I tell people stories about how I was treated before, I'm just like, wait a minute.
Right.
And, you know, and I think like that, I'm just like, yo, like, are you kidding me? Like, you're smarter than that, or you know what I mean? But
saying it out loud.
You know, to say it out loud, to really admit it. And it's like, what hurts is that you know and you knew, but you just didn't want to see it. And then once you have to kind of just come to terms with it, you're like, how could you be so stupid?
Right.
You know? So yeah, that was it. Ooh.
You know, it's kind of one of like it's like one of those instances when somebody say, if you can go back to the 10-year-old you, the 20-year-old you, or go back to the younger you and tell you something, what would it be? If you could go back to the 25-year-old Candace, what would you tell yourself?
Don't get married, J girl. That would be the first thing. I'm serious. I would say that, but then I would take away like all of this.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess I really couldn't say that. But what I would say was probably be more vocal.
Do you think you weren't vocal because your voice was stolen, or you feel like you had to relinquish it? I think that the reason why I wasn't really vocal is because I always felt like I had an inner strength that the people that I ended up with didn't have. And, you know, we all come from, you know, something growing up, you know what I mean? So that's never an excuse for anyone. But, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? You were saying that pretty much you weren't as vocal because you were protecting.
I wasn't as vocal because it was like I could see, when you see another person clearly and you can see where they hurt and you can see where their shortcomings are, you just want to help them. Like I want to help you, you know what I mean? Feel better about yourself, you know what I mean? Because you deserve it. We all deserve it. And I think that think that it causes you to in some way muffle your own voice because you feel like it's not as important as this pain that I'm looking at. You know what I mean? So you kind of get used to being quiet.
And no one makes you that way. You just kind of adopt it.
Yeah. You submit to that feeling that, okay, well, maybe if I do this thing, this will be the thing that brings them up. And it's almost like a seesaw. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just have 300 pounds on this side and 25 on this side. You know what I mean? Y'all have to balance each other out. There has to be an uplifting on both sides.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's good. That's so good. So, all in all, when you look at the entire process, the marriage, the divorce, the rebuilding, where you are now, especially your relationship with Christ, would you say that you feel God is proud?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess I can pinpoint the things that I feel like he would be, most proud of. And it's definitely just to finally find my voice and not just have it be my inner voice. And I think that was my thing. For my whole life, my voice was my inner voice. I was always very vocal, but there's certain things that I kept to myself. And now I just don't. And it's basically gearing me towards what I want and like my destiny and what's meant for me. You know what I mean? So I definitely feel like he's proud that I've reached that point. And a point of actually being happy, Also, I want to say as far as religion goes, and I say religion goes, I feel like the clarity that I received about religion, I feel like he's proud about that because on the back end of it, I feel like I can see what's of God and what's not, what's formality just made up by man and what's not. And it's just like it's allowed me to kind of push all of that to the side and focus just on the spirituality of it all. You know what I mean? Like just the connection to God. I don't need to run through Pastor so-and-so or, to get to God. He comes to us. We come to him, So I definitely feel like those would be,
You have a clearer understanding of who God is.
A clearer understanding, of who he is and who he isn't. You know what I mean?
That's good.
And what to give, time and energy to and what not to. And I think that once you get to that point, it's a little easier to trust him and where he's putting you. You know what I mean? There was a point that I want to say maybe 2 years. So 2 years after my divorce, I was working on using my voice and seizing the moment and just like walking in purpose, right? And I said, you know what? Let the fear go and let the procrastination go and just start doing things. Like when you feel them, they come to you, do them then in those moments. And so I started doing that. And when I started doing that, things started happening. And even in my darkest times when I felt like I didn't really have a relationship with God, like he was just like, all right, you're just gonna have to deal with this, and when you come out of it, I'll be here type of thing. You know what I mean? Like even in those moments, there was a moment where I tried, I did like exactly what I felt, and then it worked out for me. And it made me realize, wow, like God didn't leave me. Like he's still, like he's still here. It may not look the same, it may not feel the same, but he's still here. And it's almost like a parent. I feel like during that time, even this time, still, like just like a parent knows how to give you a little bit of space and not punish you for it. I feel like there's no difference, like God is the same. And I feel like people, they put this damning, kind of personality on God.
Right.
Like,
You're absolutely right.
You mess up once and you out of here, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no forgiveness. And I'm just like, that's just so contrary to,
to everything.
To
Yeah. So, Candace, when you look in the mirror now, what do you see?
My mother.
Clearly.
No, really. When I look in the mirror now, I see me. I do see my mother because I resemble her now. But now the older I get,
right.
But I see myself now.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally. You know how sometimes you can go through something and you can walk past the mirror every day. You can brush your teeth in the mirror. You can do your hair in the mirror, and you still don't see yourself.
Wow.
Have you ever been there?
Yeah. That's why I'm and I'm just like, been there so many times. And the reason why I asked is because I remember there was a moment in my life that I had to have a mirror experience. And when I sat there, I remember I was 28. And I was just like, I don't like what I see. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, physically. I was like, girl, who are you? And I remember I just broke down crying because I was like, I don't like you. You get what I'm saying? And I didn't even know, honestly, if I loved myself. It was just like, okay, Zanya, you're almost 29. You can go into the next decade of your life and repeat it the same way you just did the last decade.
Yeah.
Or you can have a real mirror experience right now and change what you see. Change your reflection. And oftentimes I look back at that moment and I tell people about it. And, it's helped so many people. But it's like I find myself continuing to have mirror experiences. Because that one moment changed the trajectory of my life then. But because you've gone through so much other things and more experiences and you've grown, you've learned, you've been stretched, you've matured.
Right.
Now it's like I find myself returning to the mirror saying, hey, do you still like you? You know what I mean? Are you okay with this? Okay, we don't quite like that. Let's change that, Zanya. And I think it's so important. And that's why I asked you, when you look in the mirror now, what do you see? And even to you guys, I encourage you to have one of those mirror moments because it'll force you to be real with yourself and you can either accept it and change it, even though it hurts. Me looking at myself and having that moment did not feel good. It was like the worst pain. And it's like you already feel like everybody looks at you with slime on you. And now I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I'm looking at myself like everybody else is looking at me. And so I can only imagine, going through a process like that, how every time you look in the mirror, and I love that you said, I see me now. Because so many times we look in the mirror, like you said, combing my hair, brushing my teeth, doing that, and we still don't see me. So I just think that was so great. I want you to take a second, Candace, and just encourage someone out there right now who's going through, what you've already been through, and still going through in your own way. And I just want you to give them a word of hope and encouragement that they can come out on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying this. I mean, like I said before, we don't just get one shot at love. And when it doesn't feel like love, when it doesn't feel right. There's one thing that I would say, and I'll come back to this, but there's always going to be this small little thing inside of you that's going to want something, right? Whether it's, to be talked to in a certain way or to be joked with in a certain way, hugged, whatever it is. And it's going to be very specific. It's going to be so specific that even if you voice it to the other person, they're going to be like, you're just so picky. Like, that's not real life. That's not the one. So I'll say it like this. Like, God, I feel like God puts a certain type of love in you. And for you to experience it in a certain way. We're all different people. And don't feel like because where you aren't being met with the same type of love that lives within you. Because if it's within you, it's out there for you somewhere. So don't ever feel like this is the end of the road. If you actually are just considering it, really weigh your options, and ask yourself what you want. You know, don't base it on finances, and definitely don't base it on kids. I think that's like one of the biggest. I think that's one of the, and it's hard to say because I myself don't have kids, so I don't know that struggle, but I know how it feels to be the child of, you know, like, of divorce. Right, the product of divorce. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I know that was the healthiest thing for my parents. Right. And that was the healthiest thing for me, you know, and I've seen, you know, like I see other, you know, people who are in dysfunctional relationships with children around, and they, you know, their goal is to, I want to keep the family together for my kids so that they have an example. But just like we know that kids pick up everything, you have 2-year-olds who can play the piano, they can also pick up energy. They can pick up how you treat each other. They can pick up how you feel about one another. They pick up all of that. And they carry these things with them throughout their lives, in their relationships. And these are things that they have to unlearn. But when, like, I feel, because see, with my parents, I think they got, you know, a long time ago, which in my eyes was great, because I feel like I probably could have been very, very damaged. Right. Had that been something that, you know, continued, you know what I mean? And just to see what love looks like and what love doesn't look like, you know it. I mean, by this time, you know what it is and what it isn't. And just don't be afraid of starting over. I can't tell you don't feel like damaged goods, because sometimes it just feels like that, because you kind of lost a part of you in a sense, because you've been giving so much of you away. Just keep moving forward. Don't stand still too long. You'll have your moments where you're stagnant, but don't stay there. Definitely just stay connected to your spirituality, to who you are, like, without any external, you know, like, influences and opinions. You're gonna need some time without external influences and opinions, trust me, because you have to really sit down and think about it. A lot of times in relationships, you're so busy thinking about the needs of the other person that you don't think about anything else. So this is your opportunity to think about everything else and how you feel and how it affects you in your life. But you definitely get through it. I didn't think that, like, when it happened, I didn't think that I would ever laugh and smile. You know what I mean? I was just so like, oh my God. Right. You know, and it's crazy she was talking about physical changes, because during the time, you know, I was like, bags, and I probably looked twice my age, you know, in my mind, you know what I mean? And then after the fact, you go through almost a rebirth of self in every way, you know, like a butterfly, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You definitely grow from that pain. So it's not all in vain.
So and we're wrapping up here, but I just have to ask this question, because you were talking about your parents getting divorced. Do you think you perpetuated a generational curse
by getting divorced? No. Not at all. I didn't even consider it. Because like I said, I was a child watching a relationship in front of my eyes that even at that young age, I could tell wasn't, you know, like the ideal love. Right? So I knew that was the best thing.
The best thing for you.
Yeah, that was the best thing for me. That was the best thing for, you know, my parents, for both of them. You know what I mean? So me getting a divorce, I didn't even connect my divorce to my parents' divorce at all. I just knew that where I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't happy. I think that, you know, you make your own way, you make your own, you know, your own legacy. And you don't always have to attach it to your parents, because we're not our parents. Right. You know? Right. Yeah.
Candace Locke, everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you
for your honesty, for being transparent, for being open, for showing your wounds, and just for helping everybody. I pray that this word of encouragement helped you guys, that her story is helping someone out there, whether you're still married, whether you're divorced, even if you're in a bad relationship, you're not exempt. Okay, like I said, I've never been married, but some of the same things that she was saying, I experienced. So it's not like, oh, I've never been married, I don't have to listen to that. Listen, one thing that I got from you is choosing yourself first. You know, because if you don't make sure that you are a full cup, you can't really pour into others, because you'll be left dry, you'll be left depleted, and you'll have resentment, you'll be bitter, you'll be angry, you may have hatred, and some people may turn vengeful. So I really appreciate you being so honest, and I hope it helped you guys. I hope it helped you make the decision that you needed to make, whether it's to stay or go. And we're not encouraging divorce. We're just talking because it's a real subject. And most people don't talk about it for religious reasons, you know, and a lot of people just kind of stay away from it because they're like, oh, I don't want to be the one that say I encourage that. But let's just talk about life. And that's the reality of it. So I hope it helps someone. Listen, she found life after divorce. She is not damaged goods. And guess what? If you're going through it, if you're already divorced, or if you're contemplating it, you will find life again, and you are not damaged goods. Thank you once again, Candace. Thank you all for joining me for another episode of What's the Issue Wednesday. You know what it is. Next week is the same time every Wednesday. Tomorrow is Bible study. Like I always say, join me. Let's walk the word and get some fresh revelation. You guys have a beautiful night. Thank you for joining me, and can't wait to see you again. Be blessed.
Lord, give me a sign. I'm searching for a lighthouse to get me back to shore. I'm looking for the right sign to get me to the Lord. Because it feels like I'm drifting far away, so far away. Please throw out the lifeline, save me, Lord, today. SOS.